And so it is official, Necromancy is the new skill coming to RuneScape 3 in 2023. Now, as of right now, we don't really know anything about Necromancy, but there have always been a lot of rumors around Necromancy as a skill and some possibilities of what that skill might look like. So in this video, I am going to be going over a few possibilities of what Necromancy could be, and we're going to look back through a few concept designs for the Necromancy skill and just see what this skill might look like. Now, before we jump into some actual concept designs by some other players, first off, I do want to just show you guys the definition of necromancy. So it is the practice of magic or black magic involving communication with the dead by summoning their spirits as apparitions or visions, or by resurrecting for the purpose of divination. So right there you have three skills that are in the game: magic, summoning, and divination. Although it is confirmed that the skill is not an elite skill, those three skills, they could be incorporated into necromancy for sure. Another possibility is rune crafting and maybe even prayer as well. It also talks about using the dead as a weapon. So this could be a new combat skill added to the game. We will have to wait and see. But as you will see with some of these concept designs, a lot of people are thinking it could definitely be a combat skill. Probably the most popular concept design for the Necromancy skill was first posted by Mayomez over 4 years ago. In this post, he posted a Google Doc of basically a whole concept design of the Necromancy skill, which combines magic, summoning, and rune crafting. Now, as I mentioned previously, we obviously don't know anything about this skill so far. Nothing is confirmed, but I'm going to go through this concept design by Mayomez. Of course, a lot of it probably isn't going to happen, but who knows? Maybe some of it is actually going to be incorporated into the skill that is coming in 2023. Now, first off, Mayomez did talk about this skill being an elite skill requiring level 80 magic, summoning, and rune crafting. Now, this is confirmed that the skill is not an elite skill. It's going to be accessible to all players. There isn't going to be any quests or anything locking necromancy content, so it basically will be accessible on a brand new account. So that is something that is confirmed about necromancy. It is one of the only things that we know about the skill so far. So also in this concept design, basically it is being proposed as a combat skill. So first off, you can see a few different skill cape designs. Of course, it isn't confirmed, but those skill capes do look pretty good, and we do know that, or just from the trailer that we saw, that the colors behind necromancy are going to be purple and green, so these capes do sort of reflect that. As you can see, there actually is a brand new action bar just showing some different necromancy abilities. So it is a combat skill. It's not going to be a sort of like one of the big three combat skills, like magic, ranged, and melee. Basically, the way this concept is being proposed as necromancy abilities being used alongside those three combat styles. So you'll be able to mix necromancy abilities in with the combat styles, and we will go a little bit more into that in a little bit. It also talks about a new combat formula with a new maximum combat level of 160. So we definitely could see something like that built into the game, especially if necromancy is a combat skill, which honestly it kind of seems like it should or would be. Now in this concept, it talks about becoming undead. So it talks about using an ability to become quote-unquote undead. It'll be a lot like the Incite ability, which if you don't know that ability, it just increases the likelihood that the target will attack you. So it's sort of like a passive effect, like turning a switch on your character. And so for necromancy, when you become undead, your character will give off a purple glow. You'll also increase your necromancer XP by 25%. Whilst undead, all necromancer abilities are increased by 25%, and you gain a plus 10% passive damage to undead enemies. You will be unable to use prayers, so there is that con of becoming undead. You can't use prayers, probably can't use curses either. And then also all healing items are reduced to 75% effectiveness. Now, whilst undead, when killing enemies, you will automatically gain dead parts. These are added to your currency pouch and are used later on. How much you get is determined by the enemy's combat level. This consumes any bones or ashes the enemy would have dropped. So basically, you are using these dead parts of the creatures you are killing to basically train necromancy. So it is somewhat similar to prayer there, just based off of that. Now, the concept design does show different ways you could possibly gain XP from necromancy. As you can see, casting necromancy abilities will gain experience on top of your combat XP. You can craft twisted runes, which definitely is a possibility for the main game. In the trailer, it sort of showed different rune-like designs on the letters of necromancy. So I wouldn't be surprised to see rune crafting basically intertwined with necromancy as well. And then also creating necromancy undead tokens and sort of summoning creatures, if you will, from necromancy. So that's all a possibility. Now here are some different abilities that were designed for this concept. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are a few abilities that I do want to point out just because they are quite unique and interesting. Now, these skills are not in order of level, but basically, as you can see, one possible ability would be Become Undeath. This ability will only activate if you die within the next 30 seconds, and when you die, you'll continue taking damage for 10 seconds and then be resurrected, and any damage you were dealt during death, you will deal as extra damage back at your target over 60 seconds. So it's a pretty unique ability, sort of resurrects yourself, which kind of does play into necromancy for sure. Another ability here is Rise, so the next enemy you kill will rise from the dead and will attack your current target for 60 seconds. I definitely could see an ability like this that really does play into necromancy. A few other abilities that were talked about, Twisted Sunshine, Death Swiftness, and Twisted Berserk. Of course, these are just different versions of the ultimate abilities for the three main combat styles. Now that we have the greater version of those from Zamorak, I do not think that these will be in the game, so I'm just going to skip over them. There are a few other different abilities, just some basic type abilities, threshold abilities that could potentially be in the game. I don't think there will be a whole lot of them because I think that would just really buff combat in general, but we might see one or two different basic abilities that you can now add to any action bar, or maybe one or two threshold abilities as well. To me, I more so think of necromancy as a support type skill, a lot like, your defense abilities and your constitution abilities. They have some roles to play, but they aren't main abilities. They aren't going to be incorporated into every action bar. But who knows? You could see some basic and threshold abilities that deal a sizable amount of damage as well. Now, there are a few abilities on this page that I do think are really interesting, one being the Wall of Bones. So it summons a line of 8 skeletons who will march forward in the direction they spawn, dealing 250% damage per tick to any enemy they walk into. So you can think about that a lot like Terraket's special move that he does use there. Basically just spawns a line of skeletons and they move forward, or ghosts, I think, in Terraket's case. And as they hit you, they deal a lot of damage. So I actually do think that could definitely be a possibility. It's sort of already implemented in the game in a way, and I think it would be a pretty unique ability to add. And so this Summon Colossus ability is sort of similar. Summon a 4x4 Colossal Bloat on your position, which will attack anything in a 2x2 radius. I do think there are going to be quite a few abilities like this where you're summoning undead creatures, similar to summoning, except I could see them maybe only lasting for a few seconds, or maybe a minute. I don't think it's going to be, I think that's going to be the distinction between necromancy and summoning. Necromancy is going to be more short-term summoning, and you're going to be doing it in combat, whereas, you know, you're summoning familiars, they're with you for, you know, sometimes an hour or whatnot. But anyway, those are just a few examples of some potential abilities that we could see in the game if it is a combat skill. There has also been some talk about necromancy and rune crafting sort of being linked, and in this document here, it does give the idea of new runes, so new twisted runes. And so in this concept design, all of these abilities that we talked about before, they're actually going to be casted or used through these twisted runes. So it's not going to be sort of an ability bar, it's more going to be like a necromancy spellbook. So that is also a possibility. Maybe they're not even abilities, maybe they are just spells, sort of like how magic used to be. And that way you would have to use these twisted runes. There would be a cost to using each of these abilities. The document also talks about actually summoning the undead via these undead tokens, which, as you can see, just an example here. Basically, you can create these with spirit shards, pouch, blue charm, crimson charm, and then some ingredients, a lot like a summoning. So I don't know, that definitely is a possibility, but I don't think they're going to go in that direction. I think it's a bit too similar to summoning, but we will just have to wait and see. Here it just talks about some different slots that you unlock. Again, I'm not too confident on that part of it. So as I was saying, you know, I think summoning is still going to have its place in the game of summoning the longer term familiars, and I think necromancy is going to be more those short term familiars, sort of like using an active combat skill or just casting a spell that only lasts for a really short duration. I don't think you're actually going to be summoning these undead creatures with any sort of pouch or undead token or whatnot. And so essentially that is everything in this document. This is just a table of the skill unlocks throughout the different levels that was proposed in this document. And again, I will post a link to this document in the description down below if you guys want to check it out. There was one other concept design that I was looking at, and it did have some pretty good points, so I do want to go over a few of those with you. Now, this concept design was made by Code Stark or Dave O'Mayan, and essentially it talks about necromancy again being an elite skill, which we know is not going to happen. This concept design also does propose necromancy as a combat related skill, and as you can see, the idea is that it would be linked with prayer, summoning, and slayer, so which is a bit different than the previous concept design. There are a lot of different skills that could be intertwined with necromancy. Definitely summoning is one, and magic. I think prayer, slayer could be. Divination is definitely one that I actually think will be linked to it. The main difference with this concept is the way that you are training necromancy. So it is proposed that you train by burying the bone or scattering the ashes of a monster that you just killed within a pretty short amount of time, and that will give you a necromancy XP as well. So it is a possibility. I'm not quite sure if I think that's how it is going to work or not. But again, there are just some different examples of some skills. I will link this document in the description down below as well. A lot of the abilities talked about in this document really show necromancy as more of that support skill, so it really helps your other skills. It's sort of like sort of like a necromancy skill book, where it actually buffs your combat stats against other creatures. For example, you have deal extra damage against undead creatures. And another example is soul protection here. During this ability, monsters that can drain your prayer points will be unable to do so. Gain bonus attack, strength, defense, magic, and range levels according to the amount of prayer points you have. So as you can see, a lot of them are sort of support abilities. Like AoE abilities will have increased radius. And I do think this is going to be more in line with the actual necromancy skill that we are going to get. I think it is going to be more of a support type combat skill. and rather than having some actual, basic and threshold abilities that will actually deal damage, I think you'll see more of this support type skills and whatnot to it. And so anyway, guys, I'll link both of these concept designs in the description down below. Of course, again, we do not know exactly how Necromancy is going to be released. We don't even know that it's going to be a combat skill. But I sort of talked about my opinions on what I think the skill will be. I do think it will be a combat skill. I think it will have more of that support type role. And in terms of training it, there are a lot of different possibilities. And honestly, I don't even know how to speculate on that as of right now. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of this Necromancy skill and, how you think it will play out, if you think it is good for the game, and how do you think, the skill will actually work. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.